So hello everyone, my name is Ash, also known as Lady Insanity, and today I'm here with David Gaider. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name's David Gaider. I'm the lead writer for the Dragon Age series. I've been with Bioware now for about 15 years.
Okay, so a lot of my viewers already know the basis of what is Dragon Age Inquisition. Oh, it's an action RPG and all that, so I guess I'll just jump into the questions
Sure.
as far as things go. So the first thing that I have to ask is that a lot of people were really excited about Iron Bull, and they heard all of that stuff yesterday.
Yes.
One of the things is that about how it was previously race-gated and it was removed because of the animators and John Edler.
Right.
Before in the Raptor Q&A, it was mentioned that there were 2 race-gated romances. Was Iron Bull actually originally one of them, or were they separated?
Originally there were 3 race-gated romances.
Okay.
So John jumped on that, and the cinematic designers are working incredible hours right now, and he just decided that it would be cool if everybody, no matter what race they played, could get access to Iron Bull. So he put in some. He would go home at, I don't know what time he leaves, 10, 11 at night, and put in extra hours even after that point to make sure that his character could get it. I mean, it's not something we can ask of people when they've already put in those kind of hours, but he thought that would be special. I think that's indicative of the kind of dedication we have on our team.
A lot of people were really thankful for that, and it was just a lot of people were worried about how would a dwarf and Canary work out, especially since Iron Bull is larger than a normal Canary,
Yes,
as far as the Inquisitor, right?
Yep.
How much larger?
I don't think it's a lot. He has a unique rig, though. Unfortunately, that actually adds extra complication when it comes to the kind of getting any point. I know a lot of people say, well, if it's just the sex scene. No, it was actually all the romance scenes and conversations. If there's any kind of touching or interaction between the characters, it was an extra complication, because that means the cinematic designers would then have to do multiple versions of the same scene, which is, to them, is just the same as having multiple scenes. So it was really trying to manage the workload, but he thought he had. I don't know if it was the nature of the Iron Bull scenes. Maybe he had a little bit less interaction, but he didn't think it would be that much extra work. And he ended up. I think he ended up saying that if he had known how much work it would have been when he started it, he maybe wouldn't have attempted it. But it ended up working out, which is great.
It's a good thing he didn't realize.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, now going back into the general kind of thing with Dragon Age, and I have a lot of random questions about it. But so Dragon Age is a lot about hearsay. The Chantry tells us, and a lot of people don't even know. The Elves don't even know about their past.
Right.
So it's all about learning from a whole bunch of people who say this is how the world is.
Right.
Now, with the Warden and with Hawk, they were they have a different way of perceiving the world. They know where they come from. Hawk knew the family, their own family, and they lived within that. And the Warden came from a specific origin, they know they came from nobility, or they were from the slums in Orzammar, or anything like that.
Right.
How aware in Inquisition, because there are different backgrounds, right? For the human Inquisitor is supposed to have a noble background, right? Is that across the board for? Now I think about
That's for all humans.
All humans?
Yeah, except that the human mage is from a noble background and ended up going into the circle. Okay,
I'll put it this way. So
sure.
The Grey Warden was extremely new. Didn't know anything as far as being a warden,
right? But
knew everything else in regards to the circle and the veil and all that.
Sure.
With the Inquisitor, as far as their background, they know their background, but how much of a leadership role do they know? Being a leader,
is it
learning?
A little bit of a spoiler, I guess. I don't know. I think the best way to address that is we don't start you off in a leadership position.
Okay.
So it's not like the boom, start the game and there's the Inquisition and you're the leader. There is a lead up to that, and so by the time you step into that role, you should be comfortable with what's going on and what your place is with it.
Okay. I asked that way more winded than I was supposed to.
That's right.
As far as Inquisition goes, obviously I know you can't really spoil or anything like that, but a lot of the enemies and ones that we've encountered in the previous games, not even enemies, some of them are really gray as to what they should be. For instance, Loghain. Loghain, he was visibly the Warden's enemy, But the thing is that we know from him from the Stolen Throne and like his general past and how he perceived Ferelden within the grand scape of the world. He wasn't exactly evil.
Right.
The Archdemon, he was essentially evil.
Right. Yes.
So I wanted to know, as far as the big bad, is it still Bray, or is it like, no, that dude is bad?
I don't know how much I'd want to talk about the big bad, because we haven't really spoken about what's going on behind the scenes yet. Mm-hmm. I would like to say, insofar as the enemies you encounter, you're going to get a bit of both. Same as with Origins.
Okay. But as far as, like, I know the Red Templars were considered as a enemy creature, mm-hmm. but are we actually going to be able to talk to them, or is it purely they see you, they attack you, and that's done deal?
For the Red Templars, it depends on how far how far the Red Lyrium has affected them. You get to a certain point, and they are essentially automatons. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that all Red Templars are like that. So yeah, there is some interaction with them. They're not just a mindless faction. There is some reason to it, and you will encounter that.
And does the same go for the Venatori, or
yes, absolutely.
Okay. Cool. Are they the only ones that we know as far as like enemy factions that aren't just creatures that are just going to go right after you? The Venatori and the Red Templars?
That's the only ones we've shown.
Oh, okay. Well, I did want to talk about the Red Lyrium, but I'm more interested in how blood magic works. Mm-hmm. As far as, so I've heard a lot, like, there are a lot of different, not conflicting opinions regarding, like, that we've heard from, like, oh, Bioware considers this mm-hmm. with blood magic. Like, is it, I believe the phrase was, is blood magic inherently evil? And okay. is it?
That is there's a amount of judgment call. Like, I mean, even I, as a creator, I could come out and say, yes, blood magic is inherently evil. But what would that even mean? Mm-hmm. What is the nature of evil? Are we talking about morally evil, like morally wrong? Are we talking about evil as sort of like a corruptive influence, sort of like the Darkspawn? Mm-hmm. There is evil. There is blood magic as is defined by the Chantry, which is more involves the use of blood sacrifice and mind control. Mm-hmm. But the blood magic really goes further than that as well. Because I mean, if you really think about it, the use of phylacteries mm-hmm. is a type of blood magic. Mm-hmm. The joining is a type of blood magic. So I think it's a situation where blood magic is something that is often used for evil, but ultimately it's probably a tool. Yet one must address the moral question of, if you have something like blood magic that is so easily used for evil and so commonly used for evil, that is presents such a tempting route to evil purposes, does that mean that it should not, shouldn't it be regulated or controlled or perhaps even disallowed entirely? Sort of, I think the topic has more in common with the issue of gun control, I'd say, than anything else.
So you mentioned blood sacrifices and all that. As far as like the difference between using blood as a catalyst versus right. using lyrium as a catalyst,
right.
like what is like the levels between them? Like how, like for instance, whenever was it in Redcliffe, whenever you can use either blood or lyrium in order to actually enter the Fade, mm-hmm. what is the amount that needs to be used? Like, is blood more, like, you don't have to use as much as lyrium as far as cost goes?
Like, if you go for a cost breakdown, lyrium, they both offer power, mm-hmm. ultimately. Blood has the potential to offer more power, I'd say. But, I mean, ultimately, if you had enough lyrium at your command, you probably wouldn't need blood magic per se. Mm-hmm. There are some things you can do with blood magic that you could not do just with lyrium, like mind control. Because blood magic is not just a source of power; it's a type of power. So that allows you to control other life force, to control minds. Whereas lyrium is just a source of power for all magic. Okay. You know what I mean? So you could use lyrium to power blood magic as well.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those things where blood magic as a sort of a separate, it's kind of a separate way of doing magic that allows different things, but it in itself allows a source of power. So it's not to say that blood magic is just a source of magical power. It is actually both.
this might go into story spoilers now I think about it, because the difference between blue lyrium and red lyrium,
Right.
as far as potency, is there a difference between them two?
We haven't discussed what red lyrium is yet enough to really go into detail on that. Ultimately, I would say red lyrium is, again, a different type of red lyrium. It's like the difference between green kryptonite and red kryptonite.
Okay.
If that's
no,
meaningful.
that works.
Okay. It's like and then asking, well, which type of kryptonite is more potent? They sort of do very different things.
But talking about, okay, this actually was a question I asked at PAX, and I didn't get a clear answer. But it's like with Canary magic, like hedge mages have a specific magic, Dalish have a specific magic.
Hedge mages don't have a specific magic. Hedge mages have a
different.
It's magic that hasn't been developed, so it's like a river that gets dammed, and thus the power sort of seeks alternate means of expression.
Okay.
So hedge magic can cover a wide different amount of varieties, but what you end up with is somebody who's not actually doing spells. Their natural magical talent is expressing itself in ways that normal mages consider to be, well, you've basically ruined your talent. Because once it does that, there's no way to go back, right? A hedge mage cannot turn around later and learn how to do proper spells.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the question. You said it was Canary magic?
Canary magic. Like, as far as like the Cerebus, I believe I was told the Inquisitor will have basically what we would learn in Ferelden, or Canary mage Inquisitor. They would have basically like chantry-based spells or anything, and access to that.
The Canary player who plays a Canary mage was never a Cerebus.
Okay.
A Cerebus is somebody who, they're essentially a hedge mage because they never receive proper instruction. So their talents are expressed, and then they're sort of turned into weapons, right? So any kind of instruction they receive is basically just to channel their magic power in destructive methods. So they're like just point a Cerebus at somebody and shoot is basically how the Canary would term it, if at all, if they consider that to be useful. They're not going to have more subtle arts. They're not going to be able to like do crowd control or sort of do different things. So really,
it's all geared towards destruction when it comes to the Cerebus.
Yeah, they consider the Cerebus to be weapons. But yeah, the Canary player is someone who is not lived within the Qun at all.
Okay. How far apart is magic research as far as nations go? Like Tevinter is like known as the pinnacle of all magic research.
Right.
But Ravane has like the hedge mages, and they have like a very specific kind of type, and they even take spirits within them.
Right.
And then Orlais has the university, and then also develops theirs, and it's a little bit more open magic versus Ferelden and other nations. But like, how does it work as far as like who is the top of, I don't want to say magocracy, but like of magic within the nations of.
I think the main problem is even when you look at Tevinter is that yes, because magic is acceptable there's a lot more I'd say effort at research. However, they don't share their research. It's not like the Tevinter mages at the goal will get together and work towards common goals. And if they did, they probably would make leaps and bounds. But since it's a magocracy and a very like one where the mages are often fighting with each other, they're all doing their individual research. So does that work better than say you have a circle of magi where perhaps they're really restricted to the types of research they can do, but at least they could do it as a group? I think it really depends on which group you talk to and sort of what their focus is. But because they're in no nation is sort of magic, does it exist out of context? There's always this context of like it's dangerous or it's forbidden, or even with Ravane, they have the circles there as well. It's not like, and then even when you look at like the shamans, they have their traditions that they work for, and those are in a way a type of restriction as well.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that any one group sort of overall excels versus any other. I mean, they may excel in certain areas for sure.
Oh, as far as certain areas, when it comes to what is it? Why can't I even think about it? The Navarra, like they're based in
Mortalitasi?
Yes. Yeah, and I was going to ask about like the necromancy as far as like why is it accepted over there as far as like.
That's just part of their culture. I mean, it's part of their death practices in that they when they bury people, they believe in the exchange of souls, right? So that if if they someone's soul passes through the Fade and it goes to be beyond the Fade to the Maker, there must be a soul, like a spirit, that takes that place. So they basically invite a soul to assume the place of this person who is now gone, to maintain a sort of zero-sum balance.
Okay.
And that's why they create the necropolis. Necropoli? I think that's Necropoli. The Grand Necropolis is the big one, of course, where they sort of these bodies have these spirits within them and are kept sort of to maintain sort of the reverence that for these people that are gone. It's a kind of death culture. I don't know, maybe modeled a bit after the Egyptians in a way. Yeah, it's a little creepy if you think about it. These necropoli have dead bodies, basically undead. So they're dead bodies that have been inhabited by spirits, and mostly they keep these within sarcophagi. Mm-hmm. But basically that means that here's an undead sort of mummified or tied up or whatever, and it's basically
still
a spirit.
There, though.
Yeah, and,
for like
and,
infinite time. And,
I mean, they actually, I know Cassandra talks about this a bit. There are parts of like the Grand Necropolis which have been abandoned because they fall into ruin, but in those ones, of course, they get out. So you have undead that are kind of wandering around, and if you imagine it from the spirit's perspective, the one who was sort of summoned to take that body, I don't imagine it's the best time. But certainly, from the perspective of the Navarrans, they consider it a reverential, maybe not towards the spirit, but towards the departed.
You wrote Dorian,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like a fully gay comment, but but it's less about his his identity as homosexuality, but it's more of like how Tevinter interprets that. Now, one of the things that was like that Dorian is that he's completely different from Tevinter. I don't even know how to call their citizens. Tevinter citizens, is there an actual word for it?
There is. I forget what the term is, but yeah, there is. Yeah.
But I wanted to know as far as because he's kind of like a pariah as far as like how he's perceived. He doesn't accept how bad magic has gone. But as far as what he's doing, how bad is that in Tevinter? Do they see beyond just seeing him as a pariah? Would they cast him off, or is there a hierarchy?
The thing is, the way the Tevinter magocracy works is they have a very specific notion of what is acceptable. They interbreed. It's all in an effort to produce perfect mages. And perfect is in quotes because they have a very set idea of what perfect is, and to them that means that one must present themselves as that perfect ideal in all facets. That includes in the way one dresses, in the way one looks, in the way one engages in relationships. So anything that's considered to be abnormal, it means that other families would be like, well, I don't want my mage child to breed with your mage child if they're not perfect.
Okay.
So that means that the families go out of their way to be seen as perfect by the parents and the children both. So therefore, they have more opportunities to approach to work their way up the ladder of the clans, basically the families. And so, if you have somebody like Dorian who refuses to abide by that, it's not that they're homophobic per se. I mean, they're probably perfectly fine with somebody, and they probably accept that under the surface, everybody probably is different and doesn't necessarily toe those lines. But the public face, the expectation is that publicly one must present that. Otherwise, it's like, well, okay, so they're tossing aside tradition and deciding to just be different. So that's what we see. So then is what we don't see even worse? That's sort of the underlying thing. So there's a lot of pressure within the Tevinter families to be a certain way. And I mean, that's not everything that Dorian is about, obviously, because he has bigger issues with regards to the insidiousness of the struggle between Tevinter mages to sort of achieve supremacy and how that sort of corrupts them as a class. But it does add to that, and that he sort of rejects not only the need for that struggle for supremacy, but the need for this facade that permeates the magocracy.
As far as Dorian's lineage and his family, like, if I remember correctly, there are 4 different castes. Or not castes, but like different classes. Like, is he at the top, or is it like
he's not a magister? He's not a magister.
Okay, so he's like
he's the one. The second one is called what is it? Altus. Yeah. He's Altus. He's from a prominent mage family, and therefore is nobility. Okay. But to be a magister, one must be part of the magisterium. Okay. And that is like being a senator, right? So not every mage from Tevinter is a magister.
Okay, and Dorian's he's nobility, and he obviously comes from a well-off family.
Yes, being Altus means he is eligible to become a magister.
Okay, but he's not actually, like, as far as involved in Tevinter politics or anything like that. Okay, so he just hates it. Now that, before I totally shift away from the Tevinter one, how do they view elves within, like, if they have magic and they have, like, that kind of thing?
There is a class that is specific to, freed slaves. Mm-hmm. The liberati, the slaves who have magic and thus get freed from slavery. And the liberati, you could be the child of a liberati, and you maintain that class. So you don't see a lot of elves, the free elves that would thus rise above the liberati, which is considered the lowest rank of the magocracy. But then to have any kind of magical talent sort of places you above anyone else who doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, for elves, there's a pervasive sense of what would be the word? Meritocracy. Okay. Which is not necessarily true, but if you think about it, because in a sense having magical talent means that's your ticket to success in Tevinter society, and potentially anyone it's possible for you to have magical talent. In a way, within Tevinter itself, and really even among the elves or the slaves culture, it's like that's the ticket out. And it lends maybe it's arguable that that's a false sense, but it lends a sense that we're not as unequal as everyone perceives us to be, because my child could have magical talent, and thus they will be vaulted up into the ranks of the upper echelons. Even though once you're there, you may end up in the bottom of the pecking order. Still from down below, that still seems pretty high. So the idea that could happen to your child means that there's sort of this sense of support for the system, because it seems like it is that there is some manner of equality there.
Okay, so it means like they're not like badly treated as far as things go if they have magic. In Orlais, whenever you deal with the elves, like the ones that are serving like the families or like the higher echelon of Orlesian culture, like they're not treated badly because they are part of it. But like in Tevinter, if you have magic and you're an elf, like you're not treated as an elf, you're treated as a person who has magic.
You are treated as a person who has magic, but there definitely is a social strata even among people who have magic.
Okay, so you never really get away from.
You never really get away from that, yeah. But I mean, like I said, if you're even the lowest ranks of the magical classes, still is a higher class than the soperati, which is the non-magical classes. So to anybody who's part of a non-magical social class, if you're like an elven slave, and the possibility that your child could be vaulted into the ranks of the magic classes, that still places you above the wealthiest and best off of the soperati. So that still seems like an impossibly high dream, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that your child, like, sure, it's something, but I guess the sort of trickier thing is that it's not like there's anything you can do to make that happen. But I guess just the idea that it's possible is sort of like the chance of winning the lottery. Why do people play the lottery? The chances of you winning aren't actually that good, but everyone still buys into the idea that it could happen.
I've asked too much about Tevinter.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I've always been like, what was it? I think you tweeted a couple of days ago about like what could be the next book, and I was just like Tevinter. And And then it's just like, yeah.
That was a very common response.
As far as the book, is like, are you planning to write one, or is it going to be just the next one in general?
I was just trying to think of if we're moving on to another novel, what would be some things that people were interested in? Because I was making a list, and I was like, maybe what I would like to see is not I would mind polling the fans and see if they have any ideas that were interesting that might pop out and say, oh, that's actually pretty interesting to follow. So I thought, it's worth checking and getting an idea. Are certain places or possibilities more popular than others? What are the? I mean, of course, that is just among people who pay any attention to Twitter at all.
Yeah.
But still, it was interesting to see.
There's still many of us.
Yeah, there are.
So with Last Flight that is coming out. So is that the only one that's going to be coming out this year? Or
as far as I know.
Okay, so there's not going to be any. I think Last Flight came out as a shock to a lot of people because of Masked Empire coming out also.
Right.
So I really wanted to ask, like, as far as, like, was that the only one? Because I think a lot of people are like,
could another book just drop out of the ether? Hey, oh my God, we had no idea. Trust me, I mean, I can't talk about anything that hasn't been announced. So it's entirely possible to guess that some book could drop out of the ether. I mean, until something's announced, as far as you guys are aware, it's not in the planning, right? But we try not to talk about it before it's ready, just because what if it gets delayed? What if it gets canceled? So I don't want to hint at things that we haven't publicly talked about yet.
Okay.
But I mean, ultimately, I'm pretty sure that we do want to have more books and comics and who knows what else.
So as far as the game works in Orlais, okay, so like within the game, there are a lot of people that are kind of dragged into it, like the servants, and then they have to like appeal to the people.
Oh, they mean the Great Game?
Yeah, the Great Game.
Yeah.
Like with Brialla and even her servants, or not the servants, but the other elven servants, they have to always keep an eye out for what people are saying about Celine. Who is part of the Great Game, and how do you even get involved with it?
I guess the thing to keep in mind is that it's not like an official thing. It's not an actual game.
Yeah.
There are not real rules so much as traditions. It's really just it's the way that the Orlesian nobility sort of struggle to sort of one up each other, and because they have a very great interest in maintaining a hierarchy amongst themselves. So really, it's just come out of that. It dates back to when originally the titles were all abolished in the court, and everybody for a while was just lord and lady, and thus the only way to sort of supersede somebody else in terms of social status was to be acknowledged publicly as being superior. So they just started, fighting with each other, and even when the titles came back, that it became so ingrained in Orlesian culture by that point, it just continued. But in terms of how you're asking how
do people get dragged in and become involved?
Because the nobility has influence. So if you have a noble house and you have servants, well, the servants are going to get dragged into it just because they're going to be given orders or instruction, or they're going to be naturally do things that are their patron playing the game. And to a degree, they're also going to act because they also have an invested interest in their house succeeding, right? So I mean, they're going to jump into the Great Game willingly. And there is, if you look at sort of a comparison between Orlais and Tevinter, there is a sense that even the lowest of the low can achieve success in Orlais by being good players of the game, and that is maybe even a little bit more enticing because that is something that you can directly affect with skill. There's always the idea that if I am smart and have a good nose for intrigue, therefore I'm going to be able to rise in social status, even if I'm not noble. Like if somebody who is noble and is playing the game finds me incredibly useful, that means they're going to become my patron, and they're going to give me lots of money, and I'm going to become more successful. So it just means that in Orlais, intrigue is less valued sort of the value that is applied to intrigue is therefore skewed. There's a great amount of it's considered a virtue, your ability to deceive or to sort of convince people that you are perhaps better than you are. That's considered virtuous amongst our legions.
Well, now that I'm thinking of Orlesian origins, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to also ask, as far as going back into the human noble for Inquisition, what noble for what nation, though?
Free marches.
Free marches?
Yeah, you're a marcher.
Oh, okay. So that clears up a lot of things, because a lot of people were curious about whether if it was an Orlesian noble and were you involved, tied into the game as far as not only as yourself but also the Inquisition. But having a free marcher, that totally clears things up.
It will make sense once you play.
Okay. A lot of my viewers already know about keep, so we don't have to go into like the nitty-gritty about keep. But if you're not importing keep at all,
okay,
or you're not using keep to import a specific world state,
okay,
what's going to be the default world state now? I know the Dalish origin that did the ultimate sacrifice, but what else about the world is going to be in the default?
I don't actually remember all the default settings. All I know is that overall, anytime there was any choice between this character being dead or alive, or this plot still having some lingering chance of resurfacing, or it's done,
mm-hmm.
We will always go towards the character being dead or the plot being done, just by virtue of this is sort of the default is essentially for the player who either has not played the previous games, or like we don't want to. So for instance, like, why have the ultimate sacrifice? Well, we don't need the old god baby resurfacing at some point for a player who may have no idea about what this plot is, and so here's the old god baby in whatever form he appears in Inquisition, and somebody's going, what is going on with this plot? I have no idea. So same thing with characters, right? If a character's going to arrive, and that also leaves us that if you do an import, we don't have to spend time trying to explain, okay, here's this character that in your version is alive. And so when they appear, we don't have to spend any time worrying about, do we need to introduce this character to people who haven't played the game or previous games or know anything about this character. We'd be pretty sure that if they're present, it's because you want them there.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that means then we don't have to dilute that appearance, but with explanations.
Okay. But as far as like Sebastian, and then also Felicia Day's character, I can't even remember.
Talus. Mm-hmm.
But will they actually exist in Inquisition as like they actually exist in the world, or are they just like completely
DLCs? The DLCs for Dragon Age 2 occurred whether or not you played them. I mean, they're just tales you may not have heard from Varric. Again, though, when it comes to DLC or books or comics, any characters that exist only within those areas that even a player who did play the previous games may not know. If they reappear, we do have to explain them. If Talus was to come into the picture, we would have to introduce her in a way that somebody who never met her would still get understand who she is. We may not go into the same detail. They may not have the same context had they done Mark of the Assassin, but at least the basic explanation. Same thing, like I said, with book characters. If Mevaris Talani or Reese or Evangeline was to appear, we can't rely on the fact. Like, I guess we could have a setting to keep. Like, did you read the book? Could do that, but if we're going to bring them in, we're bringing them in sort of as a game character now, and that's a little bit different. The keep settings are really there for previous games.
So there is a chance maybe to put in like, I read this book, and then later down the line.
Maybe. I'm not. I honestly don't know if they did that. I know it has been discussed. As far as Fiona goes, like, she's going to have a role in Inquisition? Maybe.
And then that would deal with having to explain who she is and then what is her involvement?
Yes.
But,
yeah, if Fiona were to appear, we would have to explain, because for many people who never read The Calling or Asunder, they might have no idea who this person is or why Grand Enchanter Fiona should be significant to them whatsoever. That's fine for most of the if she was to appear, we would have to present, this is Grand Enchanter Fiona, this is who she is. If there's any relevance to her previous her life as a Grey Warden, we could explain that. But it's really having, for somebody, the idea is always that for people who have read the books or any of the tertiary products, that gives them a deeper understanding, but does not. It's like having, if you read The Stolen Throne prior to reading Origins. You don't need The Stolen Thrones to understand Origins, but having read The Stolen Throne gives you extra context, adds to your experience. So we would never do something that, so in order for you to even understand what's going on or understand this character, now you've got to go and read the book. Okay, I get it now. Now I can go back and play. No, but
you don't need to do that.
It means that if you have, you will get more out of it.
Cool.
That's the goal.
Can I ask about confirmation on if Fiona is Alistair's mother? Like, the thing is that Layla put on Twitter, yes, but then the Twitter person who did it deleted the original one, so the context is removed. And then it's like also, who answered in the Raptor Q&A? That, Mardera said that, just like Alistair, as far as how half elves look. So,
it's weird because I never actually meant for it to be a thing. Just people, I thought the book was fairly obvious, and then people were asking, and I just never confirmed it. And I think the lack of confirmation led people to sort of, there's almost like a conspiracy theory as to maybe it's this, maybe it's this, until finally it became such that like I'm not even sure I want to discuss it now, to be honest. The thing is, how do I explain this? It comes up in the game. And I will leave it at that. And that I don't really want to get into it before that because, like I said, it comes up in the game. And that will say everything about it that I think I need to say.
Do we even have any more questions? Okay, those are my questions.
Okay,
and
sure.
then more people ask their own questions.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So
this is like fan questions.
This is all fan questions.
All right, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. So, can we refuse sex and still continue the romance?
It varies according to the character.
Okay.
Yeah. We did not do that with every character just because it... Again, like, it depended on the character and the writer, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it is possible in some situations, yes.
What is the reasoning behind Cullen being only romanceable by a female Inquisitor? Is there any reasoning?
That's sort of a larger question. I think that leads to a question of why did we change the system from, say, DA2 to Inquisition in terms of DA2 had 4 characters that were bisexual. Why did we change that? Because, I mean, it's like, why was Cullen made straight is really more of a question of why do we have straight characters and gay characters. It's like my answer to that specific question would be because that's where we eventually landed. Like because we had some characters have to be straight and some characters have to be gay and some characters have to be bisexual. So eventually, in once we made that decision, that means they're now not going to be these other things. So there's a simple answer, which is just that because that's what we decided. The more complicated question is why did we decide that there must be straight characters? And that was more like, and I've said this every time I talked about the romance system for DA2, for instance. Every time I said, given the resources, if we had enough romances to go around, I would prefer to have set sexualities, and that making them all bisexual is a compromise of sorts, and not one I really like, because bisexuality itself is not a compromise. It is a distinct sexuality, but I also didn't want to tell 4 bisexual stories, so it's like it varied even in DA2. Isabella, for instance, is very open about her sexuality. She talks about romancing either sex, and then you go all the way down to Meryl, who doesn't mention it at all. and the idea was to leave room for ambiguity. I think where we ultimately ended up on is that ambiguity wasn't necessarily helpful. I know some people like it, some people really hate it, some people felt it diluted their characters, and that led to that sort of ran down a road of what people call player sexuality, which isn't a term I really like, because it sort of implies that the player's perception of their sexuality dictates their sexuality, dictates the reality of their sexuality. So that if you're a man romancing Meryl, because she never talks about her sexuality, that lets you pretend that she's straight if you like, but you seeing her as straight does not make her straight. She is bisexual, even if you're not exposed to that. And that's sort of like, that's the same as a bisexual person. A bisexual woman could be they're in a current relationship with a man. That doesn't make her straight. She's still bisexual. So I mean that is so us changing that was not that we didn't want to deal with that. It's that getting away from the ambiguity as a thing that we thought some people might like. We're like, okay, we'd like to have such sexuality so we can tell different stories. We can have actual representation. We can tell stories like, so there are bisexual stories adjacent to gay stories and straight stories as well. I mean, it is about having all types of people, and not needing the ambiguity means we can include that as distinct parts of their character.
So specializations, we've been told, are kind of involved on a narrative basis. People are actually going to be able to recognize it. But how in depth is that? As far as like, is it really a part of your identity that people will consistently mark on it?
On which, sorry?
Like for your specialization, like you're a necromancer. Like you have that. Like, will people consistently refer to that without the story?
They there is reactivity to each of the specializations. The nature of the specializations is such that they don't really need to dominate. I mean, I think ultimately that's why we decided not to do the Blood Mage. In terms of, it seemed like Blood Mage was this weird outlier that, because of the way blood magic exists in the lore, it sort of demanded a lot of reactivity. So at the end of the day, when we finally looked at it, it's like, can we actually provide the reactivity that it requires? And if the answer was no, then maybe we shouldn't do it. So that's why we looked at doing other things. Because we do want reactivity, but we didn't want one specialization out of 9 to sort of dominate all the others in terms of the amount of content it would require and stuff to do it properly. Because in previous games we had blood magic, and we'd always had intended to have reactivity. But again, because it was that one that required so much, eventually it's like when we start the cutting process or looking at, well, what can we do? What can't we do? It's like, well, we can't give it what we intended. So then it ended up, well, now it doesn't have what it kind of needs. I think if we ever do blood magic properly, it will require approaching it maybe from a different standpoint rather than just a specialization, like maybe a class of its own, or I don't even know, a story of its own. I think is more what that calls for in the context of Dragon Age, anyway, right? Okay. Yeah, but we definitely do have reactivity to other classes and people responding to you. They definitely do recognize that you are that specialization.
Is that like the people who respond to it? Is it just the soldiers, the Inquisition, or like also NPCs like townsfolk?
I'm not sure that townsfolk would necessarily know what your specialization is. Definitely, you get a lot of reactivity amongst your inner circle. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so mainly around like the people that are like the advisors and also the companions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not, like if you're a Tempest, I'm not sure that somebody could look at you and say, he's a Tempest. You know what I mean? Yeah. And even if with the Templar, you don't necessarily walk around in Templar robes, even though the way the game works, people are sort of blind to whatever you're wearing anyway. Gee, you're wearing robes and have a staff. Could you be a mage? Yeah. But they'll probably more recognize class than they will specialization.
Oh, okay. So how do we get advisors? Are they recruited throughout the game, or are they already pre-existing? Just like how Josephine, she was pulled in by Liliana, according to the release, though.
Right. That sort of dovetails into how the Inquisition relates to the game and how you become the leader of the Inquisition. And that's kind of spoilery, so I can't really get into that.
Okay. There was the NPC that apparently we can flirt with, but can we actually go into a full-fledged romance with that person, or is it just flirting?
Yeah, I think that's why we sort of wanted to correct that before it got out of hand. Like there are definitely different levels between what somebody will consider to be a romance or not a romance. I mean, if you talk amongst fandom, they have different layers even within the ones we consider romances. Like that's not a real romance, or that got more content. Okay, fine. But I think that's why we wanted to sort of correct that before expectations got out of hand. It's not intended to be a full-fledged romance.
Okay, but is it anything like how Aveline was, that you couldn't actually romance her, but you could push her to like give you a kiss on the cheek or something like that?
I don't think I
can say that.
Want to say just yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing you'll have to encounter during play.
Okay, but not girlfriend, boyfriend with the Inquisitor.
Definitely not a full romance. No.
Okay, cool. How big is Skyhold in comparison to the other hubs we've seen in the games, as far as like the Normandy SR1 or SR2?
We will be showing Skyhold pretty soon.
Oh, really soon?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how soon. I just know that there are plans for us to go into certain aspects of the game and to show them off, and I think Skyhold is one of them.
Oh, will people freak out at the different mounts, like the bog unicorn?
I don't think I'm a good judge of figuring out what people will freak out over. As far as I can tell, people can potentially freak out about anything. I don't know. It depends on what the questioner means by freak out. Something pretty cool. Yeah, actually, I don't even know.
Oh.
What's that little giggle?
What is Colin's surname?
Oh shit, I forget. It came up. I remember when it came up, I was reading it in the document. I was like, oh, and I think I even tweeted about it. I was like, oh my god, Colin has a last name. I don't remember. That's a question that somebody would have to ask Brienne.
I'd be so sad to hear that. Oh, will something like the Black Emporium be back, and the capability of changing your face, and then also more on like what I want to know is as far as like little like a small section of like a little library or something that will tell us like more about like the world, I guess you could say.
I'm not aware of anything like the Black Emporium, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Okay.
I just may not have. There's a lot of parts of the game that I even as I'm playtesting, I'm like, oh, when did this come into being? Just because it's like there'll be people. We have such a large team. There'll be people off working on this section, especially if it's something that doesn't necessarily involve writing. Mm-hmm. And then eventually they'll finish and it'll get dropped into the game like wholesale, so you don't even see it sort of developing. Just suddenly, boom, it's in the game. So there may very well be. I don't actually know. But what was the other part of that? The having an access to, you have the codex.
Yeah, like as far as like the codex, but like I guess my question's kind of weird now that I think about it. But it's more of like the way that Black Emporium was is that it added way more to like the story as far as like it was like a cache of information.
Well, with the little codexes you could get on from the various statues or things like that.
So you can just poke in within that like small subset. I was just curious.
Don't touch the urchin. Yeah, we don't need a place for that because really it's spread throughout the world. We wrote so many codex entries for this game. I don't even know how we got through it all. So I mean, you rather than needing to go around in the Black Emporium and poke on things, you'll be going throughout all the exploration areas and finding lots of lore kind of scattered around.
Don't want to answer that. I like there are a lot of people who are asking very specific questions. I'm like, I know you can't answer that. Like, what was it? Vivienne, mainly, and like her romanceability.
Yeah. I can't talk about unannounced romances just yet. I know that it's like there's this weird, it was like a lottery. Okay, we're down to the last two. Putting up odds for these characters and declarations of, oh, this person isn't romanceable. I've been wrong. Yeah, I'm sure that's coming.
Oh, it's ready. It's ready.
Oh,
Because a lot of people are like, oh, Iron Bull female. No, there's no chance for this character then. And it's like, well, yes, there is, but no.
Eventually, it means that there are going to be some characters that cannot be romanced. There are going to be some characters that might not be romanceable by your chosen PC. And I find it funny that it's like, that's not this. I mean, if people are disappointed that they can't do that, totally understandable. You know, if you saw that character, you had hopes that, oh, maybe they have a romance arc. Cool. And if they don't, I think that some disappointment is totally legitimate. That doesn't mean they don't have an awesome story and a great friendship arc that you will get to explore. You know, there is other stuff in the game besides just romances. So I hope that disappointment will be tempered by the fact that these characters are still awesome and that they will enjoy experiencing it.
Since you mentioned friendship arc, I do want to ask: is there going to be some kind of rivalry arc?
Not in the same way that DA2 had. We don't have sort of the friendship rivalry working so that you had two different types of relationships. There is approval, and the sort of relationship can improve, and it can go negative as well. But just it isn't like there's a rivalry relationship per se.
Okay.
There is negative approval, which can lead to hostility and perhaps even the character leaving the Inquisition. But otherwise, it more or less works the same as it did in Dragon Age Origins, in that there's the arc of positive approval, which can leads through friendship and or possible relationship.
If they leave the Inquisition, will they actually come back, or are they just gone?
They're just gone forever.
Forever, and they never are actually involved with anything as far as like the world. Like,
oh, they're still in the world.
I mean, like, they're not involved in, let's say, they left the Inquisition, now they're over at the Red Templars or something like that.
Nope. If they're gone, they're gone, and they're not in the game anymore. They split. So, like, you will go to the Copper Coronet, and they'll just be hanging out there saying, hey.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? I mean, we make it obvious that if you say goodbye, we'll say, okay, do this, and they're gone for good. Just FYI. So nobody's like, well, I thought I would be able to track them down. No. If you don't want a character to be around, or you have a fight and they split. I mean, that is if you're looking at it in terms of negative approval. If you get a character to that level of negative approval, that you have a fight and they're gone for good, that is a consequence of whatever decisions you made that got that negative approval. So that is a possibility that can happen. There's also just not recruiting the character, or when there are some characters that you can say earlier, well, I just don't want you here. I think you should leave, and off they will go. And they're gone for good.
Is every character going to be you have to pick them up, or like are all of them optional as far as like picking them up?
It varies. Okay. Some characters you are going to meet for certain in the course of their critical path, and some characters, like Isabella or Fenris, you have to go out and actually get.
Is it going to be really like for me? I did not know I could actually recruit Fenris first.
Fenris was a specific example that we came out of DA2 thinking we obscured Fenris's acquirement arc too much. Because it's like the side plot that led you to him really seemed like a minor quest, right? And so
just meet this dwarf.
And we thought it would be better if it had been flagged some way, saying this is a way to get a follower at the very least, right? Or making it more obvious that it was more significant would be better. So I mean, the things that get you those followers that you have to seek out are more obvious that in terms of what they will eventually lead to, for sure.
As far as the last question is, who would you romance as far as Inquisition goes? Personally, not like...
Of the romances that we've talked about, that's tough. Because, I mean, I automatically eliminate my own.
Just because you've already like dissected the whole
thing
and know what's to come.
And it's weird because they're sort of a little bit like my children, I guess, and that's just bizarre and a little creepy, actually. It's like if it's my character and someone writes porn about them, it's like, I'm happy knowing they have a sex life that exists outside of my control. That's cool. I just don't want to know anything about it. In terms of the other characters, I think the romance that I would choose would be Iron Bull.
Iron?
Yeah, I would ride the bull.
A lot of people are happy to ride the bull.
Yeah.
And the 50 Shades of Bull.
50 Shades of Bull. Go!
Okay. But thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate it. And
No
I'm
worries.
sure a lot of people are going to appreciate it as well.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, this is Ash again. Wanted to give a big thank you to David Gaider, who was my first ever interview. I've never done interviews before, and this was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed all the questions. And thanks to those on the Bioware forums and Twitter who asked questions. You guys and gals are awesome. Take care, and I will see you next time.